Good evening, class. John Paul Brandt here once again to talk about the subject for today, freedom and liberty. I think that most contemporary scholars and historians today blend the two words together. As we read, freedom meaning free from external power, and liberty, the freedom to do as you please and live your life within the bounds of constitutional law. But before we get to that, let's talk about the fact that freedom and liberty have a long history, although they weren't used back in the 12th and 13th centuries. They had a different meaning, as Thomas Jefferson will tell us about later. In talking about the difference, freedom and liberty, we can go back in time to a period when the terms didn't exist, as I said, but were implied, foreshadowing the constitutional battles with the divine right of kings that were to come in earlier centuries. Way back in 1215, King John was attacked by the barons for excessive taxation, foreign policy, confiscation of church property, and he was accused of abuse of church power. And the barons tried to issue charters to rein in his power. One after the other, they all failed. As I said, back then there was no notion of individual rights, but the road was being paved for the battle between the divine rights of kings, which can be found in Romans chapter 13, as cited by Thomas Aquinas, the Catholic theologian, between divine rights of kings and secular constitution. In the 16th century, the Jesuit absolutist debates, or shall I say 1580 to 1620, the Jesuits, according to Nathaniel Moll at Princeton University, reshaped the natural law theories of Aquinas and his belief in the divine right of kings toward the idea of a secular constitutional state, placing the Commonwealth, or desiring to, under legal limits. Then as history marched on, remembering that the barons' first attempt to impose a Magna Charta upon King John failed, and failed many times thereafter, up until eventually in the 17th century when the Petition of Right in 1628 and the Habeas Corpus Act of 1679, I believe, contained in Clause 9 of the proposed Magna Charta, granting the right to be judged by one's peers and saying that no one should be denied justice. Thus, from the spiritual basis of the divine right of kings in Romans 13, chapters 1 and 2, cited by Aquinas, in his defense of kingship, to the anger of the barons who tried to rein in the power of King John by initiating attempts at charters or rights, to the final issuance or recognition of the Magna Charta in the 17th century, which A.J. Carlyle points out in his History of Political Theory in the West, that from the time of Edward I, the king in 1272, up until he lost power in 1307, it gave legal sanction to the right of a resistance, making government and obedience as a matter of compact. Now getting to Jefferson, we talked about inalienable rights and liberty and freedom. Again, he was referring to freedom from despotic power. The liberty, the freedom to do as you please within the limits of constitutional law. And there you have it, a brief summation of freedom and liberty. Thank you.